All right, so we're going to jump back in, and we found the video that you were talking about,
Yes.
the training video. So go ahead and pull that up here. All right, so just talk me through this.
So this was it would have been 9 something in plate weight.
Right there.
220. Yep. About 220 in the bands.
So that was the bar rolling.
Yeah. So unfortunately on Instagram, we can't really zoom in very much, but if we watch at oh, there we go. So if we watch right as I hit the hole, you can watch the bar roll.
Yep. Oh, that's a different one.
Yeah, it's a reel. So that was still a grand at the bottom and one of the fastest squats I've ever done.
Yeah, so that was the first. This was the one here.
So if we watch right about here.
Yo, shit, yeah. Well, wait a minute. Go back again. Was that you before the bar or the bar before you?
Well, so there's 2 things.
Yeah.
And after we play it again, I'll go into it. But the bar did roll a little bit. After this, which I don't know if I've really ever told anybody, but squats went god awful this training cycle. I didn't really hit anything that I wanted.
Training cycle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like leading into the WPO this year.
Okay.
I felt the strongest that I ever have, but squats were not correlating, and I had no idea why.
Do you know in hindsight?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I sent albeit too late, but I sent a couple of videos over to Rudy, and I said, hey, this is what's going on. I don't know if the gear's fitting right. I think it's a little bit too tight. After that squat, that 1150 at the top, after that squat, my legs were turning blue and like they were getting to be numb. So I'm like, okay, well, the gear's a little bit too tight. We got to take it out. But he already took it out at the beginning. My legs grew a full 2 inches this training cycle. I mean, I think they started 26 and a half and they got a little over 28.
Yeah. And that's full canvas too. That doesn't stretch. There's not a cut on the side.
Yeah. And during this time or immediately beforehand, Rudy figured out the supply chain issue, and he got a new material. This new material was thicker than the old material. So that didn't help. Well, I sent the gear back to him. He was able to figure out a way how to extend it after it was already extended once. So God bless him for that.
Yeah.
He had to add an extra lining of material to lengthen it. He has that black stripe on the side actually serves a purpose.
Yeah.
My suit now is 2 black stripes sewn together. So
yeah, so that one there does not have the stripe on the side, or it does?
That has one, but it was already extended.
Got it.
And so leading into the WPO, and that was my last squat. That was probably 2 weeks out.
Okay.
So leading into the WPO, I sent the suit to him. We took measurements, and we've gone back and forth with measurements for the last 2 years. But sent him the suit. He extended it out. I had not used the altered suit until the WPO. That was my first time using that suit. And thankfully it worked perfectly. I mean, it went 3 for 3 on squats, so it worked.
Yeah. So let's jump to that video, the WPO video there. So that's the new suit.
Yes. I mean, it's the same suit, but just expanded the legs.
All right. So this is your third squat.
Yes.
All right. Stop real quick. I wish it would show your setup, because the way that you were explaining the setup to Phil the other day, you're very methodical and technical, which you should be.
Yes.
About the setup. Because I think, as we saw, everything matters a lot at this level, probably more than the actual lift. Everything matters. So before that starts, how do you set up getting under the bar, breathing, bracing, and getting everything set?
Yeah, so that was actually one of the subjects that Sheena and I had talked about right before this.
Yeah.
But I have, with all of my lifts, with squat, bench, and deadlift, I have a checklist that I go through my head. And the checklist has to be hit in order. With squat, I walk up to the bar, identify where the center of the bar is. I place my hands, and then I slide underneath. After I slide underneath, hands, center of the bar, hands, then I place my feet. If the monolift has holes on the side for band pegs, it makes it pretty easy to figure out where you need to place your feet. But if it doesn't, I've gotten into the habit of not looking at my feet and then just setting up. because you don't always have those holes in the side.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then you learn by feel. Get your feet set up, slide underneath. Get centered, high bar. The pick is the big one. I mean, everybody knows how to set up, but it's the pick is the big one. I make sure that my femurs go off to the side. I twist my femurs out in my hip socket. As I'm doing that, I squeeze the glutes as tight as I can. By squeezing the glutes, that pushes my hips forward under the bar. And as soon as my hips go under my shoulders, so it's bar, shoulders, hips, ankles. If my knees are going out pretty far, my knees should be right there in line too. By watching that squat, I open up a lot.
Yeah.
And I define opening as moving my knees out and squeezing my glutes forward. So there's a lot of strain right there in the groin.
Now, when do you pull your air?
I take my air before I squeeze my hips through. So it's the second to last thing that I do before I pick the bar.
Mm-hmm.
My hips are back. I'm under the bar, feet set, hips go back. Take a deep breath, as deep as I can, squeeze into my belt, and then I slide my hips through.
Got it.
Then I pick the bar. Like we had talked about over the weekend, you don't always know how quick that start command is going to be. So I've gotten into the habit of releasing half my breath and then retaking it right away.
Yeah. But you're getting most of it. Like you're getting all of it, right?
Yep.
Before you get, because I think people they fuck this up too.
Yep.
Right. Because now they're underneath it and they're smashed.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So it's hard to breathe or get as much air.
So by sitting my hips back, it relieves the tension from the straps.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that rack height set just perfect, and just perfect is going to change based on how much bend is in that bar.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have that rack height set just perfectly, when you squeeze and slide underneath with your hips, you're not getting that breath with the straps being pressed down and your shoulders being pressed into that bar.
Yeah. Okay. So now back to the video. So go ahead and start this. So on your way down, what are you intentionally trying to do on the way down?
Squeeze my glutes as tight as I can. It's glutes and belly for me.
Mm-hmm.
Glutes and belly. I've gotten into the habit, and you made the comment of it when we were squatting, but I've gotten into the habit of looking straight, which has now turned into looking slightly down. I need to readjust and look up at about a 15 or 30 degree angle.
Mm-hmm.
If I look at like a 60 degree angle, it's a little bit too much.
Then the bar can roll.
Yeah, it's about 15 to 30 degrees for me. It's not a huge difference if I look down, but and when I say look down, it's a slight down. It's not curved down. It's a slight down. But it's not a huge difference. But when I go to max effort weight, I notice that I can stay stacked slightly better with my head slightly up.
Mm-hmm. All right, go back to the clip again. So the second clip is the bench, right?
Yes.
All right, so this one here is
777.
Yeah. So stop. All right. So how do you go about how do you go about setting up we'll just walk all the way through it, right? Yep. So you get under the bar.
So with the setup, before I even lay down, arms go out in front, retract the shoulders, and twist down. When I twist down, I'm squeezing the center of my rhomboids and my lats at the same time. It's the bottom of the shoulder blades. So the cue that I always tell people is shoulder blades through the rib cage. If I can visualize taking the underside of my shoulder blade and sticking it through my body, that picks my chest up.
Mm-hmm.
It's not chest up because I can squeeze my chest up without squeezing my rhomboids. For me, the rhomboids are the secret to all three lifts.
Mm-hmm.
Lats too, but it's really rhomboids for me.
Yes. So you're doing that before you lay back.
Yes.
Okay.
So I get set up, squeeze my rhomboids, squeeze my lats, and then with my arms in this zombie position, I just fall back.
Okay.
Then after I fall back, I'm on the bench, keeping my chest up. I can lock that collar into place, and then I reach my hands up overhead. Because again, my chest is up, it's locking that collar. My collar's not moving. I can reach my hands up overhead, grab the bar, and slide myself through. As I slide myself through, I'm able to shift my shoulders down. And I think that might be an anatomical advantage that I have, is I have a lot of mobility in my shoulders up and down. I can shift my shoulders down probably a good 2 inches. Whereas I don't know if other people just don't know how, or if they don't have the anatomy to do that. But I can shove my shoulders down really far, which means my bar path is about 1 inch or 2 lower than what other people's might be.
Yeah.
With that bar path being lower, I can hit the top of my stomach instead of like a sternum area.
All right. So then when you take it out, how long do you hold it before you bring it down?
Just enough to retake my breath. Because again, if I retake my breath, I demonstrate that I have control over the bar.
Okay. Then on the way down, what are you intentionally trying to do?
I'm trying to squeeze my lats and tuck my elbows. I'm focusing on the touch point. Now, if I can get that lift off a little bit further out and rest my triceps into my lats, if I can lift my triceps into my lats and hold the bar there, that's going to be longitudinally, it's going to be within 1 inch of where I need to touch.
So you're going to start further under the bar as well?
Yes.
Because that shortens the distance.
Correct.
That lift out's going to have to be.
And one mistake that I see a lot of people making is they'll set up with their eyes or even their mouth underneath the bar, but I'll set with my, like, a little bit below my collarbone under the bar. And my rationale for that is if my touch point is down by my belly and I'm getting my lift off around my sternum or top ab, well, and belly, but second ab.
Yeah.
And if I'm getting my lift off down by my sternum, that's 2 to 3 inches. There's no point that there's no reason why I need to be setting up under my eyes. If I'm getting my lift off all the way down by my sternum, that's like 18 inches.
Yeah.
So that's unnecessary movement to the bar. I'll set up with my collarbone, and that's still like a 6-inch range of motion or 6-inch movement on the lift off. If I ever hit the rack, that means the bar is going up over my face and I'm probably not locking it out in the first place.
Yeah. Okay. So go back to the video. All right. So go ahead and play it. All right. So then on the way up, are you trying to push towards your feet? Or what are you trying to do on the way up? What is your intent?
So the intent and what actually happens aren't 100%.
Why? That's why I asked that. What's the intent? And then how do you, let's go with the intent first, because there's the intent and then there's how you have to recover.
Yes.
From when the intent goes wrong.
So the intent is to pop the bar in a straight line.
Yes.
The first half of that press, I want to pop it into a straight line and not towards the feet, is straight up.
Yes.
Now, after I get to that transition point, then I can flare my elbows a little bit, but that flare will naturally drift the bar back 1 to maybe 1.5 inches. So my bar path, that J pattern, is at most 2 inches. Intentionally, ideally, it's at most 2 inches.
Yeah.
Whereas I see a lot of guys that'll touch low and then lock it out over their shoulders, and that J pattern's about 8 inches.
Okay.
So mine's as straight up and down as possible without it being a front raise, because if I'm up over my shoulders compared to down by my belly, if I touch in my belly and lock out over my belly, that's a 700-pound front raise, and nobody's doing that.
Yeah.
You can go back to, and this is the video that I show everybody, but you can go look at Eric Spoto's 716 at the 2013 Mark Bell Classic or whatever it's called. He made an attempt, or maybe it was 720. It might have been 722, but he made an attempt at the all-time world record raw bench, and he popped it up faster than any other 700-pound bench. He gets it to the lockout and then drops it. But if you look, he pressed it in a straight line over his belly and attempted a 700-pound front raise. It pops straight up and then goes right back down because his shoulders aren't strong enough when the bar is below your shoulders. Now, I have the shirt, so that adds a little bit of support to it too.
Yeah.
And I can kind of play into that shirt a little bit.
All right. Now, if you get hung up trying to touch, what do you do?
Tuck even harder and then drop even lower.
What do you mean drop lower? Drop the bar towards lower on your belly?
Towards my belly, yeah.
Okay. Because that can become an internal shoulder rotation, right?
Yes. Now,
which can be a problem.
So if we think about it from a physics standpoint, I'm trying to keep my elbow underneath my wrist, underneath the bar.
Mm-hmm.
If the elbow is directly underneath the bar, that's the tricep is the mover. The tricep goes into the elbow, into my forearm. If my forearm drops back into like a skull crusher, now that elbow is not underneath the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and if it goes even lower, if it drops down too far, now I'm going into a reverse curl kind of position,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not going to work. It has to be stacked straight up and down. In order to lower my touch point, I have to tuck my elbows even further, because now the distance of my humerus is going to allow me to touch lower.
Yeah.
But if my elbows are flared out, you think about your arms like a circle. If it's at a 45, my touch point's going to be higher than if I'm at the bottom of that circle.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can tuck my elbows in even further, I can touch lower. If I touch lower, I can push my belly is up even higher.
Yes.
Now, if I am really in a pinch, and I've had to do this once or twice, but if I'm really in a pinch and I'm hovering that last inch, I don't recommend doing it all the time, but you can drop your wrist back a little bit and then get that little extra inch. Now, dropping your wrist back with 700 pounds hurts. So I don't recommend doing that often. I don't recommend training like that, or at least not intentionally. But if you're in a meet and you have to, that's one thing that you can do. Okay.
So now that's the intent.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So now halfway up, things start to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Then what do you do there?
If things go a little haywire, it kind of depends on where. If it goes haywire halfway up, there's nothing you can do.
Well,
Good luck. Good luck.
Yeah. Let's stay on that for a minute, because now if you're in a meet, are you going to fight through? This is where some people will fuck up too.
Mm-hmm.
You can fight through it and just kill your third attempt, right? Or you can just say, take it and then save the triceps for the third. You see what I'm saying? It's a tough call, and you got to be very advanced to be able to make that call.
It is, and I screwed up that call once. Back in April, I did an unsanctioned bench only fundraiser, and I had a 837 loaded onto the bar that felt like it barely moved off my chest. And then I go and I told the spotter to take it. I said, no, not going to make it. And I go back and watch the video, and it was within half an inch of lockout, but it felt like it barely moved. And so that was a learning experience for me to not do the judge's job for them.
Yeah.
But moving on from that, I'm probably just going to make the attempt to fight through it because of that, because of that mistake that I made. Yeah. Because now I realize that my perception isn't always reality.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's tough when you're under a bar and meet too. So,
so if you're at the lockout, you just have to get that last little bit. A couple of things you can do. One, you can flare the elbows even further, because the judge's perception is going to be different. If you flare the elbows, if I'm an inch away from lockout and I flare the elbows, now the judges see the outside of my elbows and not that kink in my arm.
Yeah.
The judges might call it a good lift, even if it's not.
Yeah.
Another thing you can do is wear your sleeve even lower, keep it flush with the elbow, because now you have some of that bulk of the sleeve. It's not over top the elbow, but it's right there in line with the elbow. So that makes it a little harder to see if benches are truly locked out or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying to try to get away with anything, but if you're in that pinch, leave the decision to the judges.
Yeah. All right. Go back to the videos. All right. So which one is this? That is still the
That's
bench.
still my, opener, but that's the only one I got.
Yeah. Okay. And then the third deadlift. Let's get to that. So pause it again. Go back. So walk me through what you're doing here from that initial set pull. Right. There's a reason why I'm going to have you walk through this, because a lot of younger lifters will replicate what you just did there.
Yep.
But they're not. You know what I'm saying? They're just tugging on a bar because they saw you do it.
Yep.
But they don't know what your intent behind doing that is.
Yeah.
All right. So go ahead and pull that back up again.
Specifically tugging on the bar. And that's separate from everything else.
Yes. So the tug before the pull.
Yep. And I can go to the rest of the setup, but the tug is separate. That's a thing all of its own.
Well, let's go to this setup just
okay.
To walking to the bar and setting your feet. So let's go all the way back.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
I wish they would show these things, by the way, because a lot of these things matter. You know what I'm saying? And
I trim my videos so people just see the lift.
I know, but you have to, because that's what they want to see.
Yeah.
But here's the shitty part. And this is why training with a crew of lifters is important, because you see all the shit that happens before that.
Yep.
Because a lot of those things really matter a lot. You know, but I get it. You know, I get why people do it, because nobody's like, what the fuck? I don't want to watch this shit for 3 seconds. But okay, so I'll go ahead and pause that so we can watch that deadlift again. So you're at the chalk bowl, you walk up to the bar, then walk me through your setup.
So the deadlift bar makes it nice and easy because you have lines on the outside.
Yeah.
You can see. So the first thing is to make sure that your feet / shins are equidistant apart from that line.
Now, are the lines going to be the same on a Kabuki bar and a Texas bar?
Very likely not. I've never used a Kabuki bar,
Okay,
but very likely not.
Okay. So you still kind of going back to what you said with the squat, using the monolift band pegs, is you need to know what it's supposed to feel like.
So you need to know what it feels like. And I think the Kabuki bar probably has wider lines.
I don't know. I'm just hypothetically, because
so let's say it does.
As a USAPL, right?
Yep.
It's a power bar.
Yeah.
So those lines are most likely not going to be the same.
So if you set up on a bar and it seems like the lines are not where you're used to pulling on a Texas bar, and now you have a one with wider lines.
Yeah. Or for whatever reason.
For some reason, your deadlift bar has 2 lines on it, like Olympic bars or something.
Or it's a shitty bar and you can't even see the lines.
Yeah. So you got to know how it feels. But if there's any kind of line, any kind of indicator, maybe you find maybe there's some kind of tape on the platform that's, hopefully it's equidistant. Hopefully the bar's centered.
Yeah.
Hypothetically speaking, let's say there's tape on the platform and the bar is centered on the tape.
Yeah.
You need to find some kind of indicator to make sure that your legs, your feet, are equidistant apart from that indicator.
Mm-hmm.
Lines make it super easy.
Yeah.
Now, if it's not the same as what you're used to, and you notice that, well, I'm used to having my shins outside the lines, but these are pretty far out, and so now my shins are inside the lines, that doesn't matter as long as you're equidistant. Okay.
Now, for you personally, are you stacking your knee with your ankle?
Yes.
Well,
or the best that I can.
When you push, because see there, right, it's not, but when you flare, it will be.
Yes.
Right. So you get what I'm saying? So somebody could, if they don't know that, and then they're trying to keep it, like if that was to be equal with your knee, and from that position there, your feet would have to be in closer. But you're going to push your knees out.
Yes.
Right?
Well, so
you see what I'm saying?
Yes, but it doesn't matter, because if I'm set up and I'm symmetrical on both sides, if my knees are not fully pushed out, but they're not pushed out to the same extent on both sides, it's still equidistant.
No, okay. Yeah.
It's still going to be equidistant. Then I slide my hips through and they move out at the same distance.
Okay. So you're set. Do you pull your air before you go down?
No.
Do you pack your shoulders before you go down?
So the way that I set up my deadlift, it's very similar to the squat. It's a checklist. I walk up, I set my feet equidistance apart from whatever indicator on either side. And then after my feet are set, toes are angled out at the same distance. I personally like about a 30 degree. 45 is a little bit too far, but if I go extra wide, maybe I will go out a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
The problem I have with going too wide with the toes is now you have stability issue at the top. You have to look at the longitudinal distance. So if I have my foot angled out at a 45, you look at where the bottom of the heel is to the top of the toes, and you can take a measurement.
Yeah.
But if I'm conventional and my feet are vertical, that's a really big distance. Nobody's going to have balance issues conventional. But if you have your toes pretty far out and they're straight at a 180, you're going to have balance issues at the top of sumo.
Mm-hmm.
Angling your toes forward is going to help alleviate some of that balance issues. So as the individual, you got to figure out what is the most...
the furthest you can go with the best stability.
Yeah.
I guess that would be the best way to say it.
Yeah. So after you get your feet set up, after you get, lower body set up, first thing I do is I sit my hips back and I move my hips back, femurs out, just like a squat.
Mm-hmm.
Now, head up, chest up, just like squat. I will squat down until my fingertips touch the bar. The tip of my middle finger touches the bar. My back's already set. I set it at the top. Now I rotate at the hips. I extend my knees and I rotate forward at the hips. My shoulders are pretty far over the bar, and I'm putting most of the weight on my toes at this point so I can get my hands set. And I pull hook grip. If you're a mixed grip, you probably don't need to do this step, at least not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I pull hook grip, so I get my hook set. Then I take my breath while I'm forward. What that does is it allows room between my arm and my rib cage. I can take my breath because there's no pressure on my ribs. My ribs can't expand. If I get my breath when I'm already sunk into it, now my triceps are pushed up against my ribs. They can't go anywhere. I get a super small breath. So I take my breath when I'm forward. Then as I sit back, I'm squeezing my hips forward, pulling up on the bar. Before I sit back, I do that little yank on the bar.
Yes.
That's because I've had a hook grip has been my biggest Achilles heel in this whole sport. The hook grip, and my mixed grip is even worse than my hook grip. So as much as I struggle with hook grip, it's still better than mixed grip. My hook grip has been a struggle to try to figure out how to get it to work. And about 3 weeks out from the meet, I figured I had some kind of a formula that worked for me. And I applied it at the meet, and I went 3 for 3 for the first time ever. Pulling up on that bar takes the skin in the thumb and pulls it down so my skin's taut. It took me a little bit to realize that. I had 2 good pulls ever prior to this, 2 good pulls ever in the gym with hook grip. And I noticed that both of those I yanked up on the bar. The intent with those 2 pulls was just to get a little bit of aggression into the bar. But I realized that pulling the skin taut, it's less deviation when I start to pull.
So that's setting your hook grip
That's
more.
setting my hook.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Go ahead and play. All right. So then when you go to pull there, how much, the quote, pull the slack out of the bar, right? So are you intentionally trying to pull slower?
Yes.
And then after you feel the bar slack come up, then put the force?
As soon as I yank on the bar, I don't totally relax from the bar. I yank up on it and then I keep in that top position. Now, once I slide my hips through, there'll be more tension applied to the bar.
Yeah.
But if I relax into the bar, then that skin goes loose again, and it was a moot point.
Yeah.
So I keep some tension into the bar, and then I slide my hips through into the bar, picking my shoulders up, sliding my hips through, sliding the hips, squeezing my glutes. As I keep my glutes squeezed, that locks my femurs into that outward position, into that open hip position.
So you're using your glutes to drive the knees out, not
Yes.
the knees to drive the glutes.
Correct.
It's the same thing, but people do it different ways. But I think the way that you're doing it is the way people should do it.
Well, I appreciate that.
Well, you can push your knees out, but not flex your glutes as hard.
So the caveat to all of this is nothing happens by accident. And just because somebody's trying to do it doesn't mean they are.
Yes.
You have to have the intent behind it, and you have to know what that intent is.
But when you feel it, you know it.
You know it.
We saw it this weekend, right?
Yeah.
When he fell with a pick, but same thing with just the bar's in a different place.
Yep.
It's like, oh my God. Well, now you know.
So the way that I try to explain it to a lot of people is you're never going to get your muscles firing the way they need to while you're already under the weight. You need to get everything firing before you get the weight on your back, before the weight's in your hands, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be, as everybody says, get tight. What does get tight mean? I take it that one step further and say, get tight means squeezing my glutes, keeping my knees out. I'm pulling the bar with a squat. I'm pulling the bar down across my back with my lats. I'm pulling it down, trying to bend that bar. It's all these different things, but I explain to people what muscles should be activated with this specific movement. If I'm breaking the bar across my back, I'm not actually breaking the bar. I'm flexing my lats, trying to pull down. My fingertips are holding it, pulling down with my lats.
Mm-hmm.
I'm squeezing my glutes forward. But I explained the muscle groups that are supposed to be used.
Okay.
And I've been coaching for about 10 years. And if you explain the muscle groups and barring the individual, like you got to be careful with the individual. But if you poke that muscle, the proprioception, if you poke that muscle as they're trying to flex it, that usually helps people learn how to fire in that certain order. Do
you find that works? I'm going to jump ahead of topics here a little bit. Do you find that works with your high school kids? Because
yes.
You know what I'm saying? They don't know how to flex their muscles.
That's how I teach them.
Okay.
Yeah.
But poking and basically grabbing it so they know what it feels.
Now, if we're talking about minors, we're talking about glutes. I might take a pen.
No, yeah, I get it. Yeah. But no, let's stay on that because that's an important fucking point, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't just go grabbing minors all over the place, right? Because ask permission too.
Yeah. Well, so that is another big one. Is before I do anything, I always tell them either this is what I'm going to do or can I do this?
Yes.
And if I take the approach, hey, I'm going to touch you, and they say, oh, and I see them like kind of hesitate, I'll backtrack. Is it okay if I touch you?
Yeah.
But if it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, they're okay with it.
Okay. No, it's important to kind of harp on that a little bit because it's people from my generation are just so used to it.
Yep.
That it's like, whoa, dude, like, you know.
We had an individual who, and it was a couple of years ago, but we had an individual who had never done any kind of sports, never gone out, never done anything. Lifting was their first sport. And this individual was not comfortable with being touched. We didn't, but they weren't comfortable with watching other people get touched. And it's like, okay, that's something you kind of got to get over. Like, it's a team atmosphere. We're trying to coach other people. I'm not going to accommodate to your insecurity when I'm trying to work with, however many other people.
Yes.
Like turn around.
Mm-hmm.
But that was one of those things. Like we actually had to have that conversation.
Yes. Well, it's important that you knew to have that conversation.
Yeah.
But that's an outlying case.
And I don't remember, but I think they ended up dropping from the team.
Yeah. All right. Go back to the lifts. Now with the deadlift towards lockout, and once it clears your knees, if it becomes rough there, what is your correction? Like if the deadlift gets hard at the top, do you intentionally try to squeeze the glutes more, or are you trying to arch more? Because I know in your head, you're running through these things where a lot of other lifters are just like, fuck it, I'm going to keep pulling.
Kind of a trick question because grip has always been my limiting factor.
Yeah.
That was like a 30, 40 pound PR and it looks like an opener. That was my first time grip actually worked. If I put straps on, I'll pull 100 pounds more.
Yeah.
So I've never had that struggle without straps.
Okay.
But with straps, I mean, barring grip, the goal is to always just push my hips forward.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because with grip being the limiting factor, it always has been, I've noticed that if my thighs hit my hands too early, my grip pops or my hook pops open.
Mm-hmm.
So I've started pulling a little more forward and almost like how Yuri Belkin pulls, where he locks his knees, then pulls back. I pull up and then push my hips forward into the bar, which is opposite of a lot of people. A lot of people will pull up and then lean back. If you watch, could you go to the opening deadlift? You can watch the bar path because they film from the side.
It's it's number 9. It's the second to last one. Nope. So the same slide. It's the one right before that.
So you can see the bar path. This one.
Yeah.
The bar goes straight up and hips move forward.
Yeah.
And this is probably the best my deadlifts have ever looked.
All right, go to the squat that's from this side.
So that would be video 4. This one. All right, go back so we can see the start again, because you can kind of see the pick a little bit. It probably needs to play through again. Yeah.
All right. So you see the intent there with the knees and actually the glutes, right? Pulling it out.
Yep.
But you can also see the difference between the perception of depth from the side compared to the front.
Right.
Which I'm glad they put this out there. Now with you, how is there any difference between your squat stance and your sumo deadlift stance? Or is it the same? Because it's hard to tell from the video there. It looks pretty close.
I've messed around with varying both. Currently, they're about the same.
They're about the same.
Yeah.
So do you have residual fatigue from the squat to the pull?
In a meet, no. But, I mean, and again, grip being that limiting factor,
Okay.
I'm capable of pulling 100 pounds heavier.
So it could be.
It very well could
if you had
be.
straps.
I haven't had that point yet.
Yes.
I haven't reached that level yet.
Yes. Okay. Well, the reason I ask that is, do you train conventional?
It's a variation that I toss in every couple of weeks.
Okay. So let's say you tweak something on the squat that you had to pull conventional.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the ability to do that and stay relatively close to the same numbers?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No.
Okay.
I probably do need to pull conventional a little bit more often. That's more of an off-season thing that I do.
Yeah.
During meet prep,
Let's say you strained an adductor a little bit on the squat.
mm-hmm.
Then you're kind of fucked, right?
Yep. Yes. During meet prep, I probably favor good mornings a little bit.
Okay.
But even then, I do a lot of wide stance good mornings. Dead stop, dead stop, sumo stance, good mornings with a cambered bar. Preferably with bands, even. Love them. Those are a really good builder for me.
All right. So the good mornings with the cambered bar with the bands. Couple questions real quick. Are the bands going around the plates or around the bar?
So I use the cheap old Titan Fitness cambered bar.
Mm-hmm.
It has the two levels. Where it sits in the rack, it extends out pretty far. I put the bands up over that.
All right. So it's a rackable camber bar.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the reason I ask is because with the cambered bar, the swing is part of the motion of the bar, right? But the bands are going to take that swing away.
So the bands don't take the swing. Oh, when I have it set up that way, it doesn't take the swing away, but the bands go on either side of the bar. So it limits the swing just enough that it doesn't throw me too far out of the groove, but there still is a little bit of a swing.
What do you mean on either side of the bar?
So you have do
you have a video of that?
Probably not.
Okay. So talk me through it.
So we can imagine what a rackable camber bar looks like.
Yeah.
The plates go on.
That's what most people have, by the way,
yeah.
Because they don't have the monoliths.
Yeah. So we have the plates, and then we have that extension from the bar where that 14 inches drop down.
Yeah.
That right there, the band goes around that little extension from the sleeve and then goes up over that top rack.
Okay.
That rackable part.
Yeah.
So with the bands pulling down from it, it's going to limit how much swing because the bar is going to hit the bands on either side.
Yeah.
But it doesn't negate the swing.
Mm-hmm. I get it. You see where I was going with that?
Yes.
Because that will a lot of people will like to squat with the cambered bar.
Yes.
But it almost negates the whole purpose of it if they have it grounded, with the bands, but then some of them will also grab it up high, which is like, what the fuck is the difference, between all this?
Yep.
Where do you grab the cambered bar for the good mornings, or if it's a squat?
Where I find it most comfortable, and where I prefer is down at the bottom where my hands are parallel to the ground.
Yes.
The caveat to that is I usually will curl my hands and it'll just be like my palm and my fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
Because I also recognize that if I have a safety rack there, like let's say I blow a disc or something in the middle of a good morning and it drops, I'm not going to grab that bar and smash my fingers between the safety.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing that, I'm going to be curling my hands and I'm going to make sure that the palm of my hand and my fingers stay in the upper half of that shaft.
Yeah. I've always wanted people to put their hands down there as well.
Yep.
Because going up high, we're putting the upper back into it. Because now you're able to get your upper back tight again. And then what really is the difference if we're trying to put more focus on the erectors and glutes and so forth. And yes, there's still a difference because it's not here, it's down here. But if you're doing it to put greater emphasis in those other areas, why not just go all out?
Yes.
And put the most emphasis on there as you can. It's actually a pet peeve of mine, to be honest with you. It's like, what the fuck? Like, why? Anyhow, to get that aside.
But that's the only caveat is if you're going to have your hands down there at the bottom, I don't recommend wrapping your fingers around, because if you're in a rack or you have the mono straps, if something happens, you're smashing your fingers and breaking some knuckles.
Yeah. Well, I think the important part is, even with the max effort exercises, you have to think about why you're doing it.
Yep.
What's the intent? And then how can you emphasize that intent to the greatest ability, which is one of the things just listening to you over the weekend.